So I think we are live. Welcome everyone to our 8th episode of Our Path Forward. Today I am joined by almost our entire staff at CAIR Washington. We have everyone, I think, except Noor today. And today we're talking about service and what service means to us. So I thought we could start by just doing a quick round of introductions, and then I'll talk a little bit about the show and what we're talking about today. So I'll kick it off. My name is Jessica Schreindel, and I'm the media manager at CAIR Washington. And Jim, do you want to go next?
Sure. My name is Jim Maher. I'm the legal and policy coordinator.
Thank you. Maybe Brianna?
Hi, I'm Brianna O'Fray, and I am the legal policy manager and attorney.
Awesome. Imran, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. Imran Siddiqui, Executive Director, and I will kick it to Katie.
Hi, I'm Katie. I'm the Media and Data Coordinator at CAIR Washington, and I'll pass off to Aiden.
Hi, everyone. I'm Aiden. I'm the Community Outreach Fellow based in Yakima, Washington. I'll kick it off to Anam.
Hi, everyone. I'm Anam Khan. I am the legal fellow here at CAIR Washington. Najma?
Yeah, I think that was me. I'm Najma Swan. I'm the Youth and Advocacy Coordinator here at CAIR Washington.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. Yeah, so this is our entire team at CAIR Washington, except Noor, who is our Programs and Operations Manager. She could not be with us today. So hi, Noor, if you're watching. Yeah, so I want to read a brief description of Our Path Forward. Our Path Forward is a weekly Facebook live stream by CAIR Washington, and it's a show that gives viewers a chance to get a behind-the-scenes look at what we do at CAIR Washington, and it also invites them to join with us in reimagining what our path forward looks like in this post-Trump, soon-to-be post-COVID, inshallah, era. And today we're talking about service, and we're talking with our team about what service means to each of us. And we're also going to be sharing some of our personal stories about what led us to do this work and why we work at CAIR Washington. So I'm really excited for this conversation. This is the biggest group we've had so far. So I think first I just want to start by asking just kind of a general question about what does service mean to you all? Maybe Imran, do you want to kick it off and then we can kind of just open it up to everyone?
Yeah, that's a great question. And just to reiterate, like during the series throughout the month, we're trying to go through like different facets of like things that are important to us as an organization, like things that are part of our principles and what we strive for in the Muslim community also, but generally for those who are seeking out justice, and service is one of those great things as well. It means a lot to me, especially being here in a new community, coming from a great community in Arizona, but I've been very pleasantly surprised here in Washington as well, just seeing how dedicated folks are here to the aspect of service. Whether you have organizations, we've partnered with many of these organizations. You have groups like Blessings for All who are going out there and like feeding folks who are experiencing homelessness right now, and every single weekend, spending time, even though they're fasting, they're preparing meals, boxing them up and putting them together and putting that out there for folks who can't afford it, water and face masks and hygiene products. You have groups like Wasat, who we've partnered with as well, who are out there during Ramadan doing food distribution throughout the city of Seattle as well. And then you have folks like MAPS, MCRC, who are distributing supplies and things like that for, refugees and folks that are in need. So you see this holistic dedication to service throughout our community. That's something that should make us all proud as residents of Washington State. And for CAIR Washington, we are also servants of the community as well. I mean, it just looks a little bit different in terms of how we do it, but we're just trying to make the world a better place through the things that we do, whether it's our free legal services. Most of our clients are not able to afford, attorneys. So providing those legal services on a day-to-day basis, we understand that there's inequalities that exist in society. So being able to address those inequalities through whether it's those legal services, whether it's creating resources online for like educators guides that we send out to hundreds of different schools. Shout out to the comms team on that. Or just being a source of strength when somebody experiences hate in our community. CAIR is always there for our community to make sure that we're serving them and making sure that they're taken care of.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you for that, Imran. And for the rest of the team, what does service mean to you? I'd love to hear people's thoughts.
Oh, can I jump in with a
Sure.
little more high-level academic definition that I'm rather proud of, frankly?
I'm glad you brought that because I was going to bring it and then I got busy and forgot.
Okay. To me, service is an act that you perform without expectation of recognition or reward. And what Imran just went through is a lot of that. Mm-hmm. Something that you do and you don't expect to be rewarded or recognized for it.
Hmm. That's awesome. Thank you, Jim. I'm writing this down. That's a great definition.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to bump off of Jim's definition. Actually, I was thinking about the question yesterday and kind of from a more philosophical point of view, like a lot of us mentioned earlier, but I think that it's a lot to do with selflessness. And I thought about it and I said, yeah, it's, you know, something that is really the essence of selflessness is service to, you know, your fellow people in general. And here at CAIR Washington, we serve the Muslim community who are really in need, you know, sometimes when they don't have anywhere to go and they oftentimes think of us. So I think that's a really, you know, the highlight of our organization is that when people think of, you know, if they come up with, if there's a problem and they feel like they need some help, they think of us. So I think that's like the essence of service is that, you know, when you're out there, you're providing these services, there's people who think of you and you do it from a selfless point of view. So.
Thank you. Yeah.
I kind of like the addition of with the definition that Jim mentioned. I think what's interesting is usually when I thought of their service, it's like something you do for free for somebody else, but it's not just that. It's also, like Jim mentioned, like not expecting to be recognized, whether it be verbally or in some other way. I think that's really important because that ties into like humility and just like doing things from the bottom of your heart rather than being like, I want to be in this photo and like show that I like help build a house or like
it ties into your motive, right?
Yeah, because your ego gets into things and you're like, oh, I want to be seen as like this really altruistic, cool, like active Muslim community member. And honestly though, like what does it mean? What does service mean when that comes in the way? So I think that was interesting.
Jess, you had asked us to think about what service meant versus what maybe charity means. And
wait, can we, before we go, sorry.
I'm sorry. I'll hold on to it.
Hold on, because I think Nejma, were you going to say something about service?
You know, I was just going to kind of piggyback off of what Anna was saying, in that like when I think of like service spiritually, it's like an act of humility, right? To like sacrifice one's needs and comfort for the sake of others and just like put that before yourself. But yeah, I think a couple of other people kind of said things similar to that.
Yeah.
I think I was going to add to what I was saying too about service being something that you do for the right reasons. And I think when I think about service, I think about it as being something that can make our societies more communal. You know, if we as CAIR Washington are offering things that we can offer that other organizations may not be able to offer, like legal services, but then there are other organizations that offer things that we don't offer, like, you know, the spiritual services, etc. And if we also as humans, you know, if I'm giving something that's like fairly easy for me to give, it's something that I have extra of maybe, and other people are doing that too, like it helps us become a more communal community.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, Brianna, no, take it away, because that was actually the next question, which is tied to this, is this is something I thought about a lot, like, what is the difference between service and charity? And is there a difference? And just to give some context, like, because of my background in media and marketing, this is something, I don't know if you all have noticed, but like when I was a kid in the 90s, the word charity used to get used a lot more. We would talk about like charity work and this and that. It still does get used, but I've noticed that we've kind of shifted away from this concept of like charity and using that word and talking more about like giving back and service and da-da-da. And so I have some thoughts on this, but I wanted to open it up to you all. Brianna, I'm going to kick it over to you since you already had some thoughts on it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it can really vary based on the person and what their intents are. But when I was really thinking about that question, I realized that for me, I think the difference comes down to both our actions.
Mm-hmm.
I consider both service and charity to be an act.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I consider charity to be giving of what you have and service to be giving of who you are and what you do. So, you know, in a practical sense, charity might be, you know, donating money. It might be donating goods. It might be, you know, sharing with others what you have. But then service, for me at least, is giving of your time, your talents, your abilities, your empathy, your compassion. It's being there on the ground and inside of the issue or the obstacle or whatever that person's experiencing, and walking that path beside them and giving of them whatever you have that you can offer to help. So I think they're both very related. But it kind of comes down to what you have to offer another person. And, you know, I think they're two different sides of the same coin.
So maybe charity is like, for an analogy, according to your thoughts, like charity is putting some money in the bucket of the person ringing the bell, and maybe service is signing up to be a bell ringer or something.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a good analogy.
What are other people's thoughts on this?
I partially agree, but not really. I think service is an action, definitely, but I look at charity as more of a state of mind and a way of relating to other people or other. And I look at it in terms of in the Christian tradition, the whole idea of faith, hope, and charity is prominent. And I don't know how that falls out of the Muslim tradition, but those are three principal virtues. And in a lot of translations of the Bible, charity is translated as love. So
that's beautiful.
Yeah,
I did not know that.
In a lot of wedding ceremonies. 1 Corinthians 13.
I don't know why, but when I think of charity, I only think of money. Like I think of
that's it.
That's
And service is like going out and like volunteering, picking up trash. Like I don't know why there's this, you know, there's a dichotomy, even though I'm sure there's a lot of overlap. But like when I just think of charity, I think of donations or you know, donating to a charitable cause. A charitable cause. Like why is it even called a charitable cause?
So I Googled it, and then I remembered why I think that we kind of moved it. You can't see. I'll just read it. Why a lot of institutions moved away from it, because it says, I think charity goes back, it's probably like Old English or something, to when people give money to institutions for the poor and needy, which is a wonderful thing. But I think that it was like such a transactional thing, and like there was like this group giving money to help this group, like you were kind of separate from the suffering, separate from the people. And not that there's anything wrong with that, but I think that it didn't fully encompass what it doesn't encompass as much as like when we talk about giving back. Like giving back is a really general way to say like you can do all these different things, or even, you know, being of service, although that does tend to suggest more you doing something, you know, you taking action, or you kind of putting your body on the line. French, Brianna says it's French. Oh, interesting. So I think that's it. Kind of, for some people, have this connotation of like rich people giving alms to the poor, basically, in Charles Dickens. But it's subjective, you know, it's super subjective.
Yeah, and they're both essential. Like, you know, I mean, Islamically, like I mean, the concept of charity is something that's inextricable from the faith. So, you know, it's a different thing, you know, like one of the hadiths is like, you give your charity with your right hand and the left hand shouldn't know what you're given. So it's being given in like a humble and selfless way where you're not like thinking about it and it's not affecting your ego. Service, it is inextricable with Islamic principles as well. If you see something that you dislike, you know, change it with your hands. And if you can't do that, change it with your mouth. And if not, then do it, you know, at least hate it inside of your heart, you know, and that's sort of the lowest version of it. But doing, you know, service and getting out there and actually being out there, sort of like that highest form of acting on behalf of those in need.
Yeah, that's also very biblical. Like there's this concept, of course, of tithing, but then it's also all about service. Like Jesus was about, I don't remember Jesus, maybe he tithed, I don't know, but it was all about being of service and, you know, actually doing things with your life and with your time. So yeah, it's interesting to think about, because language evolves over time, and like how we view a word evolves as well, right? So and as we see, like it's also very subjective. Like we have different associations with this word. I wanted to shift gears a little bit and just kind of talk with you all and hear from you all about your stories about why you do this work and what led you to do this kind of work. And I don't have a super strict format for this. And I think what I'll do is I'll just pick someone, and then maybe we can just take turn after we're done, we can kick it off to someone else if that sounds good. So I'll start with a bit of my story. And I know some of you have heard this before, but I grew up, I think a lot of times people assume because I do this work and because of my political beliefs and other things that I do, that I grew up in the Seattle area, or that I grew up, you know, in a liberal family, and that's not the case. I grew up in North Idaho, Coeur d'Alene, but also not in Coeur d'Alene, like in these little towns, which no one knows, out in the mountains. And I was homeschooled growing up. I grew up in a conservative, evangelical, but also kind of fundamentalist family and belief system and community. And, you know, like a lot of areas in this country, a lot of rural areas, North Idaho is very white. It's actually a bit more diverse now than when I was growing up. But when I was growing up, it was like, I don't know, 99.9% white. It was very white. And the only people that I knew growing up who weren't white were our next door neighbors, the Moores. They were a Black family from California. Everyone's from California over there. And we actually went to church with them. But so we grew up next door to the Moores. We also lived, us and the Moores and other people in this neighborhood, less than a mile from the Aryan Nations compound. And I think a lot of people nowadays maybe don't remember the Aryan Nations, but back in the 90s, they were a big deal. They were really well known. They were basically, it was a compound. It was a white supremacist compound of, we called them skinheads, because back then, a lot of white supremacists, like, they stole this aesthetic from the punks, which is a whole another conversation, but they shaved their heads. Mm-hmm. And so they had this compound that had like, I don't think I ever saw it, but it had a big fence around it. I've seen pictures and, you know, some racist flags, and they lived on this compound, and it was like families were there and like kids. And I think that they had like their own like school, but it was all just super hate filled. And who they specifically targeted were Black people and Jewish people. And they would like march through Coeur d'Alene every summer and have this parade. And, you know, the majority of the community there overwhelmingly, like, we didn't like them. They were even scary to white people. But the reason the Aryan Nations were there was because it was so white, and they also felt like it was a welcoming place for them, a place where they could do their thing and kind of, you know, get away with it. And so this is just the culture that I grew up in, and I really didn't know hardly anyone that was different than me. Most everyone I knew was white, and everyone I knew was Christian. So I grew up in this world, and at the same time, I was being taught that that racism was basically a thing of the past, you know, slavery, and with that, you know, that whole mindset of like you're supposed to be colorblind, but really you're blind to racism, to the point where, and this is not something I'm proud of at all, but I remember when I was 18, my friends and I used to go party in Spokane, and we were at a party, and there was this young Black guy, and I remember talking with him, and I was like, well, racism's over, you know, like to his face. I said this to him as 18-year-old white girl, and you know, he got rightfully like really upset, and my friend Akeisha jumped in and was like, hey guys, let's not talk about this. But eventually what started to change my mind was I moved away from home. And even in high school, like I started having friends who were gay or friends who were different than me. And I started getting to know them as people, and then realizing that my experience and like my beliefs weren't necessarily true, and my experience wasn't everyone else's experience. And that I started to learn that there were differences in how people were treated, you know, in this country, and kind of this mythology that I've been sold wasn't what I thought it was. So long story short, but that's eventually what led me to CAIR Washington. And it's just been a journey over the years. So that's a bit of my story. Aiden, do you want to share some of yours?
Yeah, so hello everyone again. So I've mentioned this a couple of times before in separate calls with coworkers, and even at our fundraiser this past Saturday. But one thing that I think has definitely shaped my view, or just kind of made me generally passionate about like correcting the narratives of Muslims, and, you know, fighting against Islamophobia, you know, fighting against a global war on terror, is my ethnic background as an Uyghur person, my family hails from a nation called East Turkestan. It's a nation currently under the occupation of China, otherwise known as Xinjiang, which in Mandarin actually means new territory. So the name itself acknowledges the occupation. But what China recently has been doing is carrying out a campaign in the past few years to basically mass incarcerate our population, millions, in concentration camps and prisons. And you ask the reason why. China is essentially trying to erase us as a people. They're trying to erase our culture, our religion, our language. And by the way, Uyghurs are ethnically Turkic, majority are Muslim. And China has actually been justifying this erasure by saying these people are potential terrorists. So they're using the US-led global war on terror to carry out this mass genocide. And I actually have family members in these camps. We have over 90 relatives who we deem as missing, so we don't have any way of contacting them. I can't pick up my phone right now and call my aunt or my cousin, or anybody of that matter, because doing so would actually probably land them in a camp if they're not already in one, because they would say this person abroad is calling you, and because they're calling you, they're most likely tied to some kind of terrorist activity, and therefore you are also a potential terrorist. And so we have dozens and like countless members of our community in diaspora right now who have family members that have been sentenced to 20, 25 years of prison for absolutely doing nothing, for having traveled abroad to Turkey, which China deems as an act of terrorism, because they say, you've gone to a Muslim majority country, what are you doing in a place like Turkey? So they call him a separatist or an extremist and a terrorist, and then sentenced into 25 years of prison with no legal trial, no lawyer. And it's just like this extremely sinister system that is currently taking place at this current moment. And so previous to CAIR Washington, I was actually working for an organization called Justice for All. And one of their campaigns, one of their projects was actually doing a lot of advocacy work on the East Turkestan issue. So obviously, as a fresh graduate, as somebody who had been very vocal about the cause, you know, this was my dream. This was the job that I was like, okay, I'm going to do it. And I worked there for a year and a half or so. A year and a half. And then honestly, I experienced burnout with any type of advocacy work that you do. And I'm sure people on this call, I know some of our coworkers also are nodding, they know exactly what that means. But literally I experienced, I think, secondhand trauma. Like it was to the point where going to my laptop to go to work would induce tears. Like I would start being anxious, I would cry, and I would not be able to even read an article about what is happening because it was just so triggering. So I was like, that's a sign that I need to stop and I need to start doing something else. And I think that was like a wake-up call for myself, because I was like, until that point, I felt like I was so focused on this one issue that I forgot that there's so much other work that's happening in our communities. And then I was like, okay, well, I want to take the advocacy skills that I've learned and I want to be able to apply it in a different way, but at the same time in a similar way, right? So CAIR-Washington kind of fell under that description where, we're still fighting, our goal is to fight against Islamophobia, but we're focusing on our local communities. And as an American Muslim myself, I felt like, well, this also falls this also affects my community, affects me too, right? Not just as an Uyghur person, but as a Muslim living in America, living in a rural place like Yakima, I think it all fell in line. I was like, you know what, this is time for me to switch up and try something different. And I'm so, so happy I took that decision, because alhamdulillah, it's been such a great experience and it hasn't been as triggering. I mean, as much as this work can be very heavy sometimes, and there is a lot that needs to be unpacked and done in terms of fighting against our local, fighting against hate that's happening in our communities. It's something that I've figured to be a bit more manageable. And honestly, I've been also learning a lot about civil rights and our legal system. And I feel like as a Muslim living here, I feel like I should know, this is something that we should all be very engaged with. So that's kind of a quick, I think I went a little too long, but that's a kind of a quick gist of how I ended up here. So again, it's not completely separate from my identity as an Uyghur person. They're all very connected, because the global war on terror is affecting literally every corner of this earth, including places like Yakima. So that's why I'm here and doing the job that I do.
Thank you, Aiden. No, this is a big question. I'm just tell me your life story in 2 minutes. So
yeah, it can be, you can go in different directions.
Oh, there's so much to tell. I know. Thank you. You want to pick someone else?
Yeah. Whose story have I not heard before? I mean, I'm sure we're all going to speak, but Najma, I'm curious as to hear how you've come to CAIR-Washington, or what brought you here.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for sharing your story, Aiden and Jess. I joined CAIR-Washington because when I graduated in the summer of 2019, and I was looking for a workplace that reflected my passion of social justice and community-based service work. And a friend of mine who used to be part of the CAIR-WA's media team encouraged me to apply. And my passion of, just educating, empowering, and advocating for my community is what really intrigued me and what really interested me in CAIR-Washington, because of the work that we do and because of the constant work that we do uplifting marginalized communities and working to address inequities, especially systemically through policy work. And so that's why I was really interested. I joined as a community organizer, and then now I'm the youth and advocacy coordinator and work on the legal and policy department. So yeah, I guess I'll pass it to Katie, because I haven't heard from you today.
Hello again, everyone. And thanks, thanks Najma and Aiden and Jess. I really love hearing how everyone got to where they are. I always think it's really fascinating. For me, I think, so I grew up in suburbs outside of Seattle, and I definitely heard the message that working hard brings success and that we live in a meritocracy. But I think even as a little kid, I didn't quite believe it, because I didn't see that happening. And I didn't understand why certain people had concentrated power, and it didn't seem to me to be related to how hard somebody worked. I still can't say that I can explain why power is concentrated with certain people, but I think that, you know, in the decades since, I've been learning and unlearning and starting to seek to understand the stories that America tells about itself, about freedom and independence and working hard. And that I think all those stories have this like really deep underlying fear embedded in them, and this specifically like a fear of the other. And so I feel like as a white person, as a white American, it's really important to me to like look at that legacy and contend with it and like do my part to work towards a better, kinder, more charitable, generous, and equitable future. And in terms of this work, I kind of fell into doing like marketing and communications work. I went to art school and I started doing marketing and communications work for this really awesome company in St. Louis. And we did a lot of the kind of work that CAIR-Washington does, where we were doing like super grassroots work, trying to reach really hard to reach populations. A lot of it was in the health sector. And so I came up in that job seeing marketing as this way to make change, and took a hiatus, worked for some other organizations, and wanted to come back to like doing the kind of communications media work that is doing that work of like upending some of those structural inequities that are like so pervasive in our country.
Thank you, Katie.
Yeah, I will pass it off to, let's go to Anam.
I'm sorry, I was muted. Thank you, Katie. That was really interesting. I didn't know that. So with me, I was born and brought up in Columbus, Ohio. So I'm a Midwestern girl, and I grew up in the suburbs in a city called Dublin within Columbus. And
I've been there.
Oh, you've been there? Really? Do you have family?
Is it super cute, touristy?
It is, yeah.
I drove through there from Missouri to New York when I was going to school. Anyway, it's a cute town.
Oh, wow. That's great. And I don't want to say that I grew up sheltered, but in a way I grew up with, you know, it was a lot of, the community was primarily white, and I went to, you know, just a normal suburban school, and we had a mosque and we would go there, but it was growing up, there was a small Muslim community. So I kind of grew up with like a dual identity, because I was born, you know, in America, went to American schools from the get-go. But then at home, there was, I'm sure a lot of Muslim kids can relate to this as well, growing up in the 90s. At home, there's parents who are immigrants and who have come, you know, here for a better life. They have worked their tails off and really appreciated, you know, everything that America has to offer, and the American dream as they perceived it. So, you know, growing up with that perspective, and then growing up as a first generation American, really kind of put me in this limbo where I had kind of like an identity crisis, where I'm like, okay, I'm a Muslim American. But when 9/11 hit, it was kind of like, I'm a Muslim American, but America hates Muslims. So it was kind of, you know, like you felt a little bit of this tension growing up. And I hate to say that, but I've talked to my other friends who are Muslim, and they said, yeah, we have like this underlying stress also because of the hate that has been inbred and the image of Islam that has come about after 9/11. Thankfully, I didn't receive any type of hate or Islamophobia, but I've come across through the years now, growing up, going to college, going to law school. I've heard stories of friends, of colleagues who have experienced Islamophobia. And it really kind of rung a bell inside my head, you know, because I'm very advocacy oriented. I'm very justice oriented. That's the reason I went to law school. That I have to do some type of work to help any, you know, the Muslim community, any underprivileged, marginalized communities within America, because, you know, this country was built on immigration, on different types of people, different ethnicities, different creeds, different colors. It's not just one type. And the idea of inclusivity was grounded in the making of this country. So, you know, that is a principle of mine, inclusivity. And I think that the work that we do here at CAIR-Washington encompasses that, really. You know, it's so essential to that, that idea. And, you know, I think serving a marginalized community really brings about a sense of achievement. So I think that's why I chose to work here. Before I was working as like a legal support specialist. I did personal injury work, and that really didn't speak to my passion. It didn't really resonate, this, you know, satisfaction within me. And I felt I have to do the work that, you know, speaks to me, that makes me feel like I've achieved something, that I've helped somebody out who's really in need. So I think that's my little backstory.
Thank you, Anam. That was good to hear. We've talked, and like I knew most of it, but yeah, but thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. I'll kick it off to Jim.
Thank you, Anam. I found myself early on a career path that was a lot different than all of yours, but I ended up in a career that was that I was totally unsuited for, and that had really ended up having no passion for. I wanted to be an investment manager, and I was doing that because I just thought that was what I needed to do and wanted to do. So after about the third near collapse of the financial system, I thought, well, geez, I really need to do something different. And I cast about and thought, well, gee, what can I do? And what do I want to do with the rest of my life? So I realized that I wanted to help people. And so rather than going to law school and pursue the career that my grandmother wanted me to pursue originally, I thought, well, gee, why don't you become a paralegal? So I went to Highline Community College and took a 2-year course as a paralegal. Went through and did that, and got that, did very well at it, and went and tried to find jobs in the legal world. Well, at the time, that was right after the 2008 collapse of the financial system. And I found that I was competing with lawyers at the time, really. There were lawyers so desperate to get jobs, they were actually doing paralegal work. So I thought, well, how am I going to build my resume? I had to build it somehow. So I turned to nonprofit work. So I started at a place called the Eastside Legal Assistance Program, doing telephone intakes and doing managing some of their clinics. And I did that for 2 years. And then after a while, that didn't really find that very interesting. And then I discovered CAIR-Washington and got a telephone intake or a telephone interview with our then director, Arsalan Bukhari. And when he described the role of the Civil Rights Department, I was hooked. I said, I want to come in and interview, because I'd actually applied for an office assistant job. But he described what the Civil Rights Department did, and that really appealed to me, because while I was studying for my paralegal certificate, my very favorite class was constitutional law, which at Highline Community College was taught by the basketball coach. And all the team would come in and take his class and barely pass it. But of course, I got A's in that class. I mean, I was able to spit out the cases, like, and I know Brianna would know this case, Heart of Atlanta Motel. I'm sure you remember that case. That's the genesis of the Civil Rights Act. And I was able to spit out how that transpired. But anyway, I found it endlessly fascinating. And that's how I came to be in the civil rights team at CAIR Washington. I came in and interviewed briefly with Arslan, and then I met a tornado in a hijab named Jasmine Sammy, and I've been here ever since.
Yeah, I think what your story highlights, Jim, is that our lives aren't linear, right? Like, but I feel like my generation, and maybe we got some different generations here. You're kind of told, you get on this path, like go to school, get this degree, and you're going to be this, and you think you know what you're doing. I was working as a reality TV producer. I didn't get into my career, but I was like, I don't want to be doing this. Yeah. And so it takes guts that you got to jump off that conveyor belt. And it takes a lot of guts. And then I started interning, volunteering in nonprofit work as well. So yeah.
Thank you for justice was not even part of my mindset.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And you kind of don't know what's out there until you start being introduced to it, basically. But yeah. Thank you, Jeff. You want to pick someone?
Who have we not heard from yet? Haven't we not heard from everyone?
No, Brianna and Imran.
Well, my story actually flows quite nicely from that, because I made a major jump. I started off in opera, and if there's ever a very nonlinear path, I would say that I definitely meet that definition. But a lot of what Katie and Jess said about their childhoods and sort of the philosophies that they grew up in really resonates with me. I grew up in a very similar culture to Jess, in a very conservative, very Christian, very white, rural Illinois. And I absolutely was instilled with the mindset that Katie mentioned of just this really strong idea of meritocracy. And what really sort of shifted that for me, because I unfortunately did not have the same sort of instinct that Katie did, that was a false narrative. I took that hook, line, and sinker, that was truly what I believed in. And for me, what really changed that was when I was in my early 20s, I was diagnosed with a very rare and very serious disease that rendered me extremely physically disabled very, very quickly. Over the course of about a month, I went from being a pretty much fully healthy young 20-something to dislocating every joint in my body. I was on complete bed rest. I was not able to stand. I couldn't lift a pencil or a glass of water, and was completely incapacitated. But what was so frustrating for me was because I still had my mind. I still had all of my drive and my passion and my capability that I had, prior to being diagnosed with this disease. And yet all of a sudden I was not able to achieve everything that I wanted to. It was the first time that I understood that sometimes it doesn't matter how much you want something or how hard you're willing to work for it, that there are certain obstacles in place just through systems and institutions that make it impossible to achieve that. And, after a few years of recovering, I got to the point where I could use a power wheelchair, and I tried to go back to college, and I tried to, start over in a new field. I couldn't, physically sing opera anymore. So I was trying for a fresh start. And when I went back to college and tried to be a normal college student, I was very, very shocked to discover that, there were all of these obstacles, and that people didn't necessarily expect somebody with severe disabilities to succeed. And they didn't have this, infrastructure set up to allow me to succeed. And I remember being so frustrated by this. And even within, disability departments, or that, a lot of the counsel that was given was, oh, sweetheart, in your situation, nobody would expect you to still be here and still trying. It's okay. No, you don't have to. You can be on disability. Nobody would expect you to keep going. And that was just infuriating to me, because I still had all the passion and all the drive in the world, and I knew I had the capability to be a full functioning human being. So that was what first set me on the path of learning what my rights were and organizing and trying to create some change on behalf of people who didn't necessarily have a voice. And through campus organizing, I really started doing a lot of disability rights work and getting, physical infrastructure changed on my campus, eventually allowing me to graduate. And that's what led me to law school. And through law school, over the course of the time that I was there, I was hearing a lot of rhetoric. It was, running through the second half of the second Obama term and into the 2016 elections. And what was so frustrating there was that the vast majority of the doctors that saved my life were immigrants from Pakistan, Nigeria. And these people had dedicated their entire lives to helping other people. They had literally saved my life and made it possible for me to be a functioning human being again. And all I was hearing was how they were terrorists and they're drains on a system, and they don't work hard enough, and if we allow people to come into this country, they're just going to be on welfare and they're not going to work hard enough. And I got it. It clicked for me then that immigrants experience the same types of obstacles that I experienced through the system just holding you back. You can have all the drive in the world. You can have all of the intent to be a contributing person in society, to do everything right. And sometimes systems just won't let you move forward. And that was so frustrating for me. So I started studying immigration law and civil rights law and international human rights law. And, that just, my passion for that work only continued to increase as the rhetoric got worse. And as, we started seeing these policies change and become more and more oppressive. And, I'm so grateful that we're not exactly in the same political climate, but a lot of those systems still exist. So that's really sort of how I ended up here.
Thank you, Brianna, for sharing that.
Oh, am I the last person? All right.
The ED always gets, I don't know why, the same thing happened with Miss C. We always make you last. I don't know.
It's all good. You guys hear enough from me on a day-to-day basis. But I have a pretty eclectic background. Born in Auburn, Alabama, grew up in the Atlanta metro area in Georgia. So similar to a lot of you folks, I grew up in the pre 9/11 era, going to school, and sort of the history of this country was very, sanitized in terms of, every racism is behind us, Civil War was about states' rights and all of this type of stuff, where it's just these little things are being programmed into society's heads. But I, as a Muslim, I think I was probably the only Muslim or one of two Muslims in my high school. I was always a little bit different. So I just beat to a little bit of a different drummer, was always good at, writing growing up and things like that. I thought that I was going to get into maybe like sports journalism or something along those lines. I ended up going to school for marketing, and finishing my undergrad in Texas, actually. And this is like right during the 9/11 era, when, hate crimes and things like that were spiking. And I knew that I had something to offer. Like, as somebody who grew up here and who was seeing all these misconceptions against our community, I had to use that skill that I had at writing to do something. Even though I was doing other things professionally, I would, pen articles here and there in different media outlets online and try to really challenge those perceptions of Islam and Muslims that were taking place and that are still taking place today. Funny thing is, around 2004 timeframe, I was still living in Dallas, and I had applied to work at the CAIR chapter over there at that time. And, I was like, okay, CAIR is like a good organization. I've seen them on the front lines doing this work and standing up. And I applied and I was like, okay, like, let me, see if there's an opportunity for me here. They said, thanks, but no thanks. So I didn't get that job. Moved to Arizona in 2005, applied at the CAIR chapter over there. They also said, thanks, but no thanks. So like, kids, if you see my story and you get rejected the first few times, don't worry about it. Like, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has a plan for you. So this was part of my plan. If I was hired by either of those chapters at those times, within like 2 years of that time frame, both of them had sort of like gone under, and like I wouldn't have been working there after like a certain amount of time. So it wasn't in my sort of destiny to be employed there at that time, but I had to go out there and sort of grind in order to sort of build myself up within the Muslim American community over here. I started my own business, and one of those businesses was a coffee business. It's still there in Arizona. Families running
Where You Bean?
Yeah, Where You Bean Coffee. Shout out to Where You Bean. Had some other businesses over there. So I had to build myself up professionally while I was still like doing this work on the side. I ended up joining the CAIR chapter in Arizona in 2011 timeframe as a volunteer board member, and had to just really, put in that service, that free service to build up the chapter from the ground up. And that, I think that actually humbles you as an individual. Like, you can't have everything handed to you in this world. A lot of times, like the grind that you have to put in order to get to where I am, like, now looking later on, like I'm the executive director of a, a large chapter, which is pretty cool. But, all these lessons that you learn as you go along, that sort of strengthens you, the rejection that you get and sort of getting that pushback. You can't have everything lined up for you. So, alhamdulillah, I'm here today in Washington State, happy to be part of this chapter and, moving us to the next generation.
Well, we are happy to have you, Imran. I knew most of your story, but I didn't know about that. I didn't know about the rejections, and you had to keep grinding.
Oh, I got lots of rejections in my lifetime. So
yeah, I have too. I have a failed modeling career. I haven't told you. Tell you about that later.
It makes you that much stronger.
Yeah.
I like it when people keep it real. Thanks, Ron.
Yeah. I think, was that everyone? We're almost to, I guess before we go, I had other questions we're not going to get to, but I was wondering if a few people could answer this question, because I think it's an interesting question, which is, what do you wish that people knew about this work? And we don't all have to answer this, but I know there's some good answers. I don't have an answer, but I just want to throw that out there real quick before we have to wrap up. Does anyone have any thoughts about what they wish people knew about this work?
Oh, go ahead. Yeah, quickly, I think the behind the scenes stuff, like the honest and difficult conversations we have, like often internally on like what we could like do better as an organization, because I think that it's imperative, like when you are a community-based organization that is primarily service oriented and one that provides like services to historically marginalized communities, that like we are constantly having those conversations, right? And that like we continue to be intentional with the work that we do. So I think that like that's something that I wish people knew about, is that like we are talking about these things, we are doing this work, and that like we're constantly like working on ourselves to be better so that we could be better service leaders. And yeah, I think that's what
it's like daily. I think people see us as an institution, which we are, I guess, in a way, but like they don't see us and like the real people that are behind the scenes. Yeah,
that was a really good one, Najma.
I've got one, Jess. Actually, let me slip in the what's most challenging about this work. Mm-hmm. I never know what's going to be on the other end of the phone when I pick up the phone. Mm-hmm. And it's never boring, rarely ever boring. But the thing I want people to know most is that please, oh, please, oh, please call us right away when things start going sideways on you. It's a lot easier to call the fire department when you start smelling smoke than when the flames are up above your roof. If you can understand that metaphor, it's easier for us to help you early on than it is when things are way too late. So call us.
It's free, and if we miss your call, If we miss your call, we'll call you back. If you need a translator, we'll provide a translator. Yeah, please call us. Thank you, Jim. Anyone?
Another thing I would say, sort of with regards to the legal department specifically, I think because CAIR's forward face is so strong, we put out so much information. We really, we put on a very strong front end that might come off like we're a very large organization. But really, what you see here is it. This is all of us. And, specifically for the legal department, yeah, it's, right now we have one attorney, we're hiring another attorney. But please know that, we are doing our best, and that we will always do absolutely everything that we can to help on every request we get. Yeah. But the number of requests we get do massively outnumber the capacity of the staff that we have right now, which is one of the reasons why it's so incredibly important that we have, community support to continue growing, because the need is absolutely there. But, if you feel like your case is taking a while, or you're not hearing from us on a daily basis, please know that, it's not a matter of us not working on it or not caring. It's just, we have very limited capacity, but I can promise you've never seen a more dedicated team. We literally work night and day because it's personal for us. We care so much about, the outcome for your situation. It's not a neutral work for us. It's a passion, and we genuinely are invested in all of your outcomes. So I would love for you all to keep that in mind.
I was trying to find a picture of Noor so I could be like, she's not here. But here, wait, I found it. I'm being weird. Sorry, guys. And here's Noor, our programs and operations person.
The glue that keeps it all running smoothly.
Yes. Yeah, the person who keeps the machine running. So thank you, Noor. Anyone else? Final thoughts?
I mean, I can just close us out. Like, I know, it was great to have this conversation. It was great to have everybody from the team, minus Noor, part of this conversation today. As you see, our dear beloved community, this is your team. This is your civil rights organization for this state. So in these final days of Ramadan, just remember that we are a grassroots donor supported organization. We're out there on the front lines fighting for you each and every day. There's just a little bit, I think just 1 week left in Ramadan. This is the time, where giving matters the most, where your deeds are multiplied exponentially as well. And you can see that the spending that you will do will go to a great place. Tax deductible, zakat eligible, free legal services for our community, making sure that we get the resources to the schools, to the universities, to the prison systems, to those who need to be educated on Islam and Muslims, and standing up for the marginalized in the legislature as well. So we have an amazing team and amazing work that we do. We punch way above our weight, but we need your support this Ramadan. So don't forget about us, and make sure to donate generously as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Imran. Well, on that, I think we're barely past 4 o'clock. So really quick for next week's Our Path Forward, we're not having one, I decided. I'm taking a mental health day next Thursday. So we're not going to have an episode next Thursday, but we will have one the following Thursday, which is I think the 20th. And I don't know what we're going to talk about yet. So I'm going to reach out my team. I'm going to talk to you all about it. But if you're watching this on Facebook or Instagram, I would love to hear from you all about what you would like to see. I want to hear your ideas. So if you have an idea about maybe who we could have on or what we should talk about, anything, I would love to hear it. You can comment, DM us, or send us an email. So thank you everyone for tuning in. Thank you to my team, all my awesome team members, for sharing your stories. I love hearing them, and it's a chance for us to, as a team, because we're remote, for us to get to know each other better, and then for our community and those watching to get to know CAIR Washington better. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Yes.
Thank you.